Welcome back to the channel, everybody, for another soap opera episode of So Are the Days of Our Special Operator Lives. Okay, so I'm sure all of you are well aware of the insanity in the special operations influencer spheres right now, with everybody basically just being total liars about their service, all right? So that's what we're going to talk about today, okay? And we're going to go over the reasons why all these guys have gone about it this way, okay? There's some obvious surface level reasons, and then there's some reasons that I think are a little bit deeper that you might not realize, okay? Now, I want to preface this before we dive into this video, okay? Before all the seal suckers out there with their favorite, influencer, Marcus Luttrell or whoever, get upset, you're just jealous, okay? On this channel, the regulars of the channel know I am the one channel that has not targeted any of these dudes personally, okay? I've been highly critical of organizations, the Navy SEAL organization, for some failures and leadership issues and things like that, but I never target anyone personally, other than my most recent video about Luttrell because he decided to say a bunch of crazy shit on a podcast, right? We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, not only that, but I have actually defended all of these guys, multiple times on the channel, okay, when the rest of the special operation community has been coming down on top of them and the civilian world, okay, especially Jocko. I've defended Tim Kennedy. I've defended all these guys. So don't fucking come to me and say you're just jealous, that's why you're making this content. That's not what my channel has been. However, the reality is the information that has come out recently about a bunch of these people is so damning and so backed up by facts that I've had to take a step back and say, you know what? I was wrong. You guys fucking fooled me, okay? And the reason why, and I want you guys to understand this, why I've always been so sort of defensive of other special operators in the war sphere is, again, I spent a long time in Army Special Forces, okay? The Special Forces Regiment is incredibly dear to me, right? My dad is a former Green Beret. I'm a retired Green Beret. All my friends are Green Berets, or SEALs, right? Or MARSOC dudes. And, kind of the famous joke of, I barely like my wife because she's not a Green Beret. Okay, so I want to give the benefit of the doubt to all these dudes, right? Because I have been in nasty combat myself. I've got all of Valor and Combat Awards to back it up. Don't talk about it much. But I understand what my brothers have gone through in combat, okay? And I don't want to, loosely shit on that, all right? And so that's why I've steered away from this. However, again, you fucking fooled me. So here we are. And now we're going to get involved and invested, all right? So let's jump into the video, okay? So why, all right, we're going to talk about why. Why do these dudes lie about their service, lie about their war stories, or massively embellish the truth? Okay, there's a bunch of reasons, but we're going to start with the most obvious, the most service level, one of the probably biggest reasons, and that's for monetary gain. Okay, let's look at it objectively. And we're going to talk about Tim Kennedy, Marcus Luttrell, Chris Kyle, Rob O'Neill, Jocko. Okay, there's a litany of them. The reality is they have all made massive monetary gains off of these stories, okay? Tim Kennedy, okay? His books, obviously the book The Anti-Hero Podcast is covered, right? His company, Sheepdog Response, right? He makes a ton of money providing the Protectors Academy and all these different, self-defense tactical courses that you basically, and I do that myself, and you leverage your Special Forces career as a reputable reason for customers to come take your classes, okay? He does podcasts, endorsements, products, right? He partnered with companies like the USCC. The list goes on. The monetary gain is massive, okay? Marcus Luttrell, multiple books, movies. He's on podcasts all the time. Not only that, political gain, right? His brother is in Congress, okay? So they have used this reputational gain for huge monetary and political leverage, okay? Chris Kyle, okay? Don't want to, shit on anybody that's dead. The reality is, okay, books, movies, endorsement deals, Okay, Rob O'Neill, books, podcasts, endorsement deals, products. Okay, and obviously Jocko's in every possible space there. Jocko's going to be a little bit separate than the rest of these guys, and we'll talk a little bit about why the reason that is a little bit later. Okay, so what they all have done is leveraged special operations careers, but also war stories as a means to build a brand and build a reputation. Absolutely nothing wrong with that if it's true. Okay. And that is the problem, the lining that seems to stay consistent with all of these guys is it turns like it's looking like these stories are just not fucking true, or they're so insanely embellished that they just become fiction. Okay, the problem is and I know like those of you who are civilians and didn't spend time in special operations, or even regular veterans, don't really understand how a lot of this works. Okay, so when you hear stories, you probably just assume they're true. Okay, but there's a lot of nuance to all these things, right? That those of us who actually worked in this career and did this for real in combat, when we hear bullshit stories, we know immediately. Okay, and that's sort of kind of, I think, the biggest problem is that these guys have all used their fake stories and their embellished stories as platforms to sort of almost like con artists fool the American public, and they use patriotism and all these things to sort of leverage all that. It's not great. Okay, the question is it really that bad to do? Is there some potential benefits for the U.S. military by doing it? We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but right out the gate, obviously, monetary gain is a huge, huge factor in this. Becoming famous, huge brand deals, endorsement deals, things like that. Even at my level, I've been retired for barely a year, smaller YouTube channel. There's monetary gain to be made. I have brand deals myself. So you can only imagine what these guys who are 10, 20x what I am, what type of cash they're actually bringing in for this. Okay, so I hate to say this, but have sort of, I don't want to say sold out because, the stories aren't true, but they've sort of given up their integrity for monetary gain. And that's the reality. But there's some other reasons, too, that this type of thing happens. The next one, I think, is probably, and it might be as big as monetary gain, and that's insecurity of service. And let me explain. Okay, so especially when you are a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL or Delta Force operator, the men who came before you, there's so many insane true stories, Medal of Honor winners, and all this crazy things that you hear your entire time coming up in the regiment, and then you do your career. A lot of guys don't even deploy to combat. A lot of guys have never fired a shot at all, never been to war, okay? And so coming up in an organization where you're basically standing on the backs of giants, and then you don't actually really do anything comparable to everybody who came before you, it can be very, very difficult for a lot of guys. And this isn't just special operators, this is infantrymen as well that come back that did nothing, and there's no knock on it. Your service is your service, right? But there can be a real deep-rooted insecurity that comes with basically your service not living up to what you expected it to be, and that is really heightened in the special operations community. And that's really what we see. And if you haven't seen the Anti-Hero podcast about Tim Kennedy, right, you need to go watch it, okay, if you're into this type of thing. Because, it's a brutal watch, right? And that's what we really see with Tim Kennedy, is what I think is he has this depiction of who he needs to be in his own mind for the public's fear. And so he's just massively embellished or just straight up made up war stories to fit the narrative in his mind of what he needs to be. Okay, because I think it's a deep-rooted insecurity thing. You would think a guy who's been fighting in the UFC, he's a Green Beret, he's all these different things. What the hell would he have to be insecure about? Well, his peers who have done crazy shit. And I know what it's like, right? Even with my war resume, I looked at my teammates as if they were 1,000 miles beyond what I ever could be in the Green Beret combat sphere, okay? I had so much respect and so much awe of my teammates and the things they had done, right? That, you know, and luckily I'm not insecure about it because I had a great career, right? And I got in a lot of combat and a lot of crazy shit myself. So, but I know what that's like, okay? Doesn't make an excuse to fabricate all this shit, but it is what it is, right? You also, and this is a lot of, you know, someone like Tim, and I don't want to get too much into Tim Kennedy in this video because here's the reality, guys. A little shout out for Wednesday, okay? Just a little hint. We got a lot of Green Berets together to do a video on the Tim Kennedy debacle. A lot. And yeah, it's gonna be rough, okay? So let's not get too much into that. You guys can look forward to that Sunday, probably around 11 a.m. Pacific time. We'll put that out. It's gonna be a banger right now. But again, all of this is sort of to pull the wool over the eyes of civilians and people who have, you know, they hear these stories, they read your book, they assume it's true. They also assume it's true because nobody has sort of torn you down, right? And that's where we get, you know, these guys that just, when they don't get caught, they just continue to lie and embellish, right? And again, it's insecurity, but it's also insecurity laced into narcissism, right? Because your average SF guy, totally totally okay with his service, right? Whatever he did. But if you're a narcissist, okay, and your self-image is the most important thing to you, and you're insecure about that, that is the type of person that's going to massively lie and embellish stories, okay? So that's where we get that from. Now, real quick, we're going to jump into what stories from these dudes, and it's going to be surface level. We're going to talk about the main ones that are 100% fucking lies and bullshit, okay? And before we do that, I'm going to tell you guys a true story, all right, from combat in Afghanistan, all right, that I was involved in, all right? So we can sort of compare what a true story looks like to maybe a made-up story, all right? So we were in Helmand Province going into an area called Musa Calais, which is one of the nastiest areas in Afghanistan for the entire part of the war, okay? We were actually working with a MARSOC team, all right? And we were moving our way up to a pretty large compound, big-ass courtyard with multiple compounds spread throughout it. In Afghanistan, a lot of these compounds have huge, like almost, you know, 50 to 100 meter open courtyards with compounds laced within, right? So we were in two separate elements. Right, my element was basically to move around the west side of the compound as we were going to try to breach into one of the walls because you never want to go inside the doorways in Afghanistan because of the IED threat. The other element went around the right side, okay? As we, you know, and I'm going to speed up through the story because I needed to go faster, okay? So we had gotten all the way around the left side of the compound. We're getting ready to breach, and we start taking machine gun fire from a rooftop from inside the compound. We basically all have to get down, and we're basically pinned behind this wall. There's nowhere for us to go. We're calling out, hey, we need air support. We need something to take this PKM machine gunner. I think it was firing out of a window on like a second story floor at us. And we need the other element to assist us, which they couldn't get an angle on doing anything to that building. They threw a couple 40 Mike rounds at it, Carl Gustav round, couldn't bring down the wall. We're also too close for the aircraft to strike. All right, so too danger close, couldn't strike. So we're kind of just pinned down. And what happened was this Marine Raider team sergeant stood up, poured arms with his rifle, yelled, "Follow me," right? World War II or World War I trench, most heroic shit ever, infantry style, right? And we just fucking book it. We just take off running while getting shot at, right? All the way over to our other element. We get to our other element, still taking overwhelming fire. We get into an Australian peel. An Australian peel, you kind of see it probably in like Tears of the Sun, where everybody's online, and as you're rotating guy after guy behind to move while shooting. And we do that for over a mile. Our Air Force JTAC gets shot through the calf, okay, as he's running. He starts yelling out medic as he hits the ground. Our 18 Delta literally yells at him, throws him a tourniquet, yells at him, he's like, patch yourself up, keep fucking running, right? And we Australian peel for over a mile to get out of this target. Super wild, okay? The reason why I'm telling you guys that story is because that's a true story, but I wasn't on that deployment. I wasn't on That's not my story. I completely just made that up. Not that the story is not true, but that was my team sergeant, who I basically just told his story as if it was mine. So there you go. You guys can see how easy it is for someone like Tim Kennedy to hear stories from buddies and the community and pass them off as his own. Bet you guys didn't think that's where that was going. But that's just an example of how easy this is to do when you're in the community and you know all the fucking stories, okay? So, let's talk about the bullshit stories. Sorry to fool you guys there, right? All right, the stories, Tim Kennedy, I'm not going to get too into deep, but it's starting to look like pretty much all of them are just other people's stories or so far embellished that they're no longer even close to reality of what's true, which is sad because, you know, he's got a career and had a career that was good enough. People would still be impressed with it. It would have still been a good combat deployment, is what it is. Chris Kyle, excuse me. Ones we know are fake, okay? Him claiming that he was shooting looters and American civilians during Hurricane Katrina. Obviously, he'd be in prison for the rest of his life if that was true. Not true. You know, the whole thing with Jesse Ventura, you know, he made up that he knocked him out in a bar fight or whatever. We know that's not true, okay? I'm not even going to get into all the discrepancies with what happened downrange and Ramadi and all those things, all right? Because I wasn't there and nobody else was. So I'm not even going to comment on that. But there's a lot, right? Luttrell, his only story. He has one story, lone survivor. Other than that, and as we know, the entire fucking thing from his perspective, and he's admitted to it at this point, let's just take the gloves off and be honest. All right, the motherfucker ran. I know some of the people that picked him up. He had shot, it's not true that he hadn't shot any rounds, okay? But he had shot, I think, like half of one of his 12 magazines, okay? So the reality is, that entire story is bullshit made up by him, okay? I mean, it's true. True, you know, obviously they lost SEALs on the mountain, Operation Red Wings, you know, terrible story, but his portion, we all know the truth at this point. Rob O'Neill, interesting one. No one in the special operations community, and especially at the tier 1 level, believes he shot bin Laden. Nobody. I wasn't there. I don't know enough of it. I'll just tell you from the community, it's almost like passed off as like obviously made up, okay, which is interesting. All right, Jocko. This is the one I'm still holding out on hope because I've fucking gone to bat for this dude against Eric Deming, which, let me be very clear before he put in the comments section, oh, see, Eric Deming was right. Eric Deming's a fucking liar too. Eric Deming is bottled into all these guys. Why? Because he came out and told a bunch of fucking stories that he never saw or heard with his own eyes, just like all these other motherfuckers. He's just passing off stories that he heard, just like Tim Kennedy, okay? So you can loop him in with all these other dudes. That's full of shit. Jocko, I'm holding out hope, okay? There's still really been no proof that any of the accusations against him are true. The problem is they're all fucking liars. All these fucking dudes have just turned out to be liars. So the track record is not great, okay? And who knows? We'll have to wait and see if any more comes out about that. It's unfortunate, right? Now, why does the military and the Department of Defense not only allow this, but, and I'm not going to say just encourage it, but they actually help these dudes pull this off, okay? As we did with the video about Marcus Luttrell admitting that the U.S. Navy, you know, basically just handed him the book, got him a PR team, got his lawyers, sent him on his way, and told him, you're the new greatest Navy recruitment tool out there, okay? Well, and there you go. That's the reason why, okay? You think about all those books that I showed you, all those movies that I showed you earlier. Those are massive propaganda recruitment tools for the United States military. That's the reality, okay? And they've done a good fucking job about it. I even had one of my buddies, who's one of my teammates, fellow Green Beret, talking to him about the Tim Kennedy debacle. And he even said, well, you know, he does a fucking great job at recruiting dudes into the regiment. Although it's obvious all his stories are fucking lies, you know, so should we give him a pass? I mean, we have for a long time, right? And yes, he does do a good job with marketing and recruitment. You can't knock the dude for that, right? You know, and like I said with Luttrell's story, facilitated by the U.S. Navy, okay? Books, movies, right? Lone Survivor, American Sniper, like all of these movies are actually funded by the Pentagon, right? The budgets are provided, but completely designed for propaganda. And it is what it is, right? Like the military has to meet recruitment numbers. It's kind of disgusting that they do it the way they do it in a lot of ways, but it is what it is, right? So the question then is, what are we gonna do about it? Because again, 2024 has been rough. It has been a rough year. And again, I have had the wool pulled over my eyes as well by these dudes, okay? I wanted, again, to give them the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to defend them. But again, it's just like, now I'm pissed because I realize you made a fucking fool out of me, okay? So, Brent Tucker at the Anti-Hero Podcast, for one, the research they did on the Tim Kennedy episode was incredible. Like, if you watch that episode and you don't walk away from that believing it, like, your brain's dead. Your brain dead. Like, it's just, there's too much, right? But he said something in there that, it's just veterans, and people are saying veterans, just veterans tearing down other veterans. And what he said really resonated with me. And he said, you know what? If our fellow veterans, if we don't police each other, who's going to? Civilians? Civilians can't do it because they have no idea what any of these stories are fabricated or true or not, right? It is literally incumbent upon us as fellow soft operators to police our own. Okay? What has been really rough with the Tim Kennedy thing is he's a fellow Green Beret. And Green Berets just don't do this shit. It is not in our culture to lie and embellish and make up war stories. Of course, war stories are always, the fish is always bigger than it really was, right? But, like, the level of this, like, this is just not what Green Berets do, okay? And that part of that is so many dudes were fooled is because you would never expect a Green Beret to have done it. SEALs, yeah, sorry guys, but, like, a little bit more your MO to do this type of shit, okay? So yeah, I'm embarrassed. It's hard, man. It sucks. It really does suck because, again, you guys know, like, I am not a veteran who attacks other veterans, but it's gotten to the point. There's so much damning evidence out there about all this that I can no longer just sit by and say I'm gonna, not listen. The truth is out there. It is what it is. So, yeah, I'm going to, again, be on board. And what we're going to do is if, it's proven that you're full of shit, I think all of us in the creator space are going to out you. And that is what it is. Okay? Because, again, protecting each other and the soft community, paramount. Okay? Protecting our warfighters, paramount. But stolen valor, I don't care if you're a Green Beret or not. We're not going to fucking allow it. Okay? So again, what I want you guys, again, keep a lookout for this Sunday. We are going to have, it's going to be a spicy episode. All right? Again, we're going to have a bunch of Green Berets, Delta Force operator, Navy SEALs, all on a podcast together. And we are going to really get in the weeds over this Tim Kennedy debacle. So should be an interesting one. So, I hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving, great holidays, and probably surprised to see this type of video from me, but it's going to be interesting because we got a lot of content to talk about along these lines going forward. All right, guys. Again, Black Friday sale, Barbell Apparel. Head on over there. I think it goes on until Monday. Grab yourself a pair of jeans for $99, or I think they got 20% off of everything over there. So make sure you check it out. All right, everybody. Take care. That's going to do it for this one. See you on Sunday.